Let's look at this rather grim story coming out of Newcastle Teesside Crown Court.
Awful.
Just a couple of hours ago. A terrorist who stabbed a stranger to death in an attack motivated by the Gaza conflict has been sentenced to life in prison. This is Ahmed Ali Alid, 45-year-old asylum seeker, says he was from Morocco, can't be confirmed. Would have killed more people had he not been cornered by armed police while seeking out more victims. This is back in October. He's been jailed for 44 years, so he's going to be at His Majesty's pleasure at our expense. But this opens up an awful lot of questions about, you know, how was this man even in the country?
Yes.
Why was he unchecked? Clearly, it was a bloke that wanted to cause harm to people and went out and did precisely that.
Yeah, and he, by all accounts and the evidence that came out of his trial, he tried to kill his housemate before he went on and killed this poor, bypasser. He just killed a passerby.
Yeah.
And what that person had to do with Gaza, I don't know. I have never understood why people have this attitude where they think it's acceptable to go out and abuse Jewish people in the United Kingdom because of the policy of Israel, another country, when British Jews are British citizens who have a government in this country, the United Kingdom. This is even worse. He just went out and found a random victim and killed somebody.
70-year-old man. Yeah.
Yeah, when I say worse, it's just abhorrent and abhorrent, isn't it? But the lack of, there is no logic here. This is just a murderer, and it's a murderer that we effectively consciously chose to allow to stay in our country because, again, the evidence from the proceedings before his conviction showed that he'd been in some 13 European countries before he came here, and why on earth anyone might think he had a legitimate claim to stay in the United Kingdom, given that background before he committed this crime, I do not understand.
Well, that's the point.
We've got to get better at sending people back.
Yeah, or at the very least, making sure that somebody can't willfully just mooch around the place unchecked. I mean, the idea that this fella had such a checkered history in different countries, claiming to be from Morocco, they can't even fully claim that, didn't speak enough English to be able to make his case or answer questions in court. There was a translator involved in that. All the boxes were ticked here of essentially inviting somebody in who we know nothing about. And now we do. He meant harm and he caused harm, fatally so.
Correct. And part of the trouble with these circumstances is that the law on international refugee treatment back to 1951, the convention says basically if you've got a legitimate claim anywhere, you can apply anywhere. And there's more than 300 million displaced people around the world right now on the move. And more than that, nudging towards 1 billion people who have or may have a legitimate claim. I mean, plainly with the best of them in the world, the framework built in 1951 that basically said come one, come all, doesn't fit the modern environment. And the truth about that, Ian, is the most liberal hand-wringing people who say they want to be more generous, that theory got tested to destruction because Angela Merkel said there is no limit to the number of people the Germans will take. And it turned out there was. That limit was 1.5 million. Well, if you're a German today, bearing the social and economic cost of that, you may think 1.5 million was far too much. But let's agree, even the most generous people found there was a limit. So once you agree there's a limit, let's start having new rules, because the old rules don't work.
Yeah, spot on stuff. Let's move then to a lighter story. And I would encourage you, before we talk about this, to have a look and a listen at this.
I'm killing animals, and it feels good. You know the blood on your face. You know the blood on your hands. It feels good.
I can guarantee you.
The chaotic scene is a vegan having a pop at a bloke eating a kebab. That's a very bad thing to do. I know there are some iffy kebabs out there. I appreciate that, Alex. And if that was the contention, I'd understand it. But this was somebody very upset. And the reason we played that was to just really highlight I think this is a fascinating story. A vegan family took drastic action after becoming increasingly angry over their neighbours' love of meat. The family, who follow a vegan lifestyle, was so infuriated over their carnivore neighbours prepping meaty meals, they decided to send threatening notes. So initially they just complained that they were cooking in their own kitchen, said, can you close your windows when you cook, because we don't like the smell of meat. And then the family had a barbecue, and these characters lost their minds over this. And now it appears, despite saying we would appreciate your understanding, there's a bit of a standoff going on.
Look, first of all, I think it's a shame, right? Because most of the time you should be able to sort things out with a chat. I think things are much better normally in person than they are on social media. People, generally speaking, are nicer and more polite in real life than they are in the online world we increasingly inhabit. Clearly, in the footage that you're playing there, the guy having his kebab, she's obviously in the wrong to be screaming in his face, but he's winding her up as well. Of course, right? So, you know, it's probably better not to go out of your way to wind people up. But in the end, you're entitled to cook in your own home and you're entitled to barbecue in your garden. Yeah. Increasingly, the thing that bothers me, the bigger picture, is people who expect others to conform to their way of life. And part of society is just that you're just learning to rub along with people that you disagree with or don't get on with, but also learning that you don't always get your way. And the other example of that I've just seen today is the claim that there's something called time blindness, which is people who never turn up on time, and the desire to be able to be accommodated in the workplace. So that your employer should have to accommodate the fact that you can't turn up.
It's an illness
you can't turn up.
The fact you're a late comer and you can't be punctual is some kind of condition.
It's a condition.
Get out of here.
My point is, it's the same mentality. It's the same mentality that someone says, I get to dictate what my neighbour eats because I don't like it. It's the same mentality. It's, I want to have my way at all times. I don't respect how society works. I don't respect how people may be getting along generally. I won't recognise the fact my views in a tiny minority. You know, you may not like eating meat, fair enough. But the desire to impose your views on somebody else, that's too far.
It's the irrational nature of things, I think. And neighbourhood or neighbourly disputes are as old as man itself. And they come in all sorts of forms, and we often see these cases that somebody, you know, planted a big bush in their driveway and it knocked out the light, and somebody tried to poison the cat, and then it ends up in court, and hundreds of thousands of pounds later with no clear winner. You see how these things can pan out, or they can just be infuriating. I mean, lots of people have stories of, you know, bad neighbours. Have you ever experienced anything like that yourself, Alex?
Well, it may just be I live a very placid life, calm and reserved, as everyone knows about me. But I haven't. But I have been in my last house on the street that I lived in. There was a guy who'd built himself a little roof terrace. I mean, frankly, you couldn't even really see it. But this drove people on my street into like normal, calm, generally calm people, drove them into a state of like incandescence. The things they said about this guy, he was like the devil incarnate. You know, and I finally met him. He was a perfectly nice guy. He just happened to have a roof terrace they didn't like. And I think we could do with a bit more. This is why I was thinking, why I started by saying it was sad with your vegan neighbours. If they just chatted to their neighbours a bit more, you might find in the end they'd say, hey, we're going out on Friday. Do you mind having your barbecue then instead of on Thursday? And if you just find a bit of accommodation, you've got to learn to rub along with people in society. And that, along with learning to agree to disagree, I think are skills we're fast losing.
Or open a slaughterhouse in your shed, which...
because it's not mutually exclusive.
There is that possibility. Yeah, we had a fella down the road once that lost his mind. This was about 2 Christmases ago. He absolutely lost the plot because somebody put an inflatable Santa on their lawn at Christmas. You know when people put their decorations up?
Yeah.
It's not that unusual, but what his mistake was, he was saying it brings down the tone of the area. That was his point. You know, we have some nice decorations in this neck of the woods, and someone's put one of those tacky inflatable Santas. He then took a picture of it, of the person's house and the Santa, and put it on social media. So what a load of us did, not every neighbour, but about 20 of us, we all went out and bought inflatable Santa.
You bought your own inflatable Santa, didn't you?
We lobbed it up in the garden, yeah.
Exactly. It's like the Streisand effect. Barbara Streisand sued a guy because he put a picture of her house online. And of course, the backlash was far bigger than the reaction to the initial thing would ever have been. And the Streisand effect there meant that picture went all the way around the world in a way that otherwise it would have remained obscure and unknown. The same way, that guy turned one inflatable Santa into 2 football teams worth of inflatable Santas with his own misery. Well, serves him right.
Absolutely spot on. Listen, Alex, always good to get your views on these things. Thank you. That's Alex Deane.